1951, a bathroom in Tulsa, and the porcelain is cold under her fingertips. The faucet drips against enamel. She presses her face into a bowl of ice water and the sting hits her cheekbones. She is 46 and looks 35. $100 billion industry exists because what she knew was buried. By the end of this video, you will know what she did and why you were never told. Mid-century. American women aged slower on a fraction of what women spend today. Not because they had better genetics or more time, but because they possess knowledge that has since been commercially erased. This video opens with an original deep dive into a forgotten morning ritual that Hollywood actresses and ordinary housewives swore by to tighten pores and firm skin before the beauty industry made it disappear. The ice water face plunge, a practice so simple and so effective that no corporation could figure out how to charge for it. After that deep dive, 5 recovered practices follow. Vanished acne remedies from the 1950s that cleared skin without a single chemical. Then the centerpiece of this compilation, Depression-era anti-aging tricks that kept women looking decades younger on pennies a day, methods so effective and so inexpensive that an entire modern industry had to be built on top of their erasure. If you watch nothing else, watch that. Then collagen-rich foods that kept 1950s skin tight for a fraction of what supplements cost today, teeth-whitening secrets that cost less than a dime, and hair-washing rituals that kept hair thick and full for decades. 6 buried practices, 1 continuous arc. Every single one taken for the same reason. By the late 1940s, the morning ice water facial was standard among Hollywood makeup artists and housewives from Pasadena to Pittsburgh. Women filled a basin with cold water and ice, submerged their faces for 30 seconds, repeated twice, and patted dry. The cold constricted blood vessels, reduced puffiness, and tightened pores. A 2014 study in the North American Journal of Medical Sciences confirmed that cold water produces vasoconstriction, measurably reducing inflammation. The method cost nothing. By 1960, the cosmetics industry had replaced it with serum sold at enormous markup. It did not fail. It was erased. What she did with that bowl of ice water every morning was only one layer of a system that touched every surface of the body. The 5 practices that follow were its missing chapters. Think about what that means. A woman in 1951 could walk into her bathroom, open her own faucet, drop 3 ice cubes from her freezer into a mixing bowl, and perform a skin-tightening treatment that a $2,000 facial attempts to replicate today. No appointment, no waiting room, no insurance code, just water and cold and 60 seconds of discipline before the coffee was ready. Hollywood knew it. Ava Gardner's makeup artist at MGM used ice water on her face before every shoot. Joan Crawford kept a bowl on her bathroom counter the way other women kept a vase of flowers. The studios never advertised it because there was nothing to advertise. You cannot trademark a bowl of ice. You cannot patent a temperature. That is the quiet engine behind every practice in this video. The ones that worked best were the ones nobody could own. A vanity in a bedroom in Scranton, Pennsylvania, 1954. The mirror is beveled at the edges and the light falls warm from a single bulb above. Open the medicine cabinet and count what is inside. Cold cream, petroleum jelly, a jar of lemon juice, a tin of baking soda, a bottle of witch hazel, a comb. That is the entire inventory. Open the kitchen drawer beneath the window and find a jar of bacon drippings, a bottle of white vinegar, a lemon half wrapped in wax paper. Everything a woman needed to care for her skin, her teeth, her hair, and her appearance fit inside one cabinet and one drawer. The knowledge was not exotic. It was domestic. It moved from mother to daughter in bathrooms and kitchens across working-class America. It required no prescription, no department store counter, no appointment. A woman in Omaha could walk into a Woolworth's in 1952 and buy everything she needed for her face, her hair, and her teeth for under $2. That same routine today costs $400 a year. The difference is not inflation, the difference is invention. Entire categories were created to replace things that never needed replacing. Those women were not being frugal. They were using what worked. What follows are 5 of those practices, recovered and restored.
Number 15, the Noxzema Cold Cream Wash. Women and teenagers across the country scooped Noxzema from the cobalt blue jar and washed their faces with it every night. It drew dirt from the pores, killed bacteria, and left the skin tingling clean. There was the cobalt blue glass jar on the bathroom shelf, the thick white cream inside, and the camphor, eucalyptus, and menthol smell that hit your nose before the lid was fully off. A Baltimore pharmacist named George Bunting invented it in 1914. He called it Dr. Bunting's sunburn remedy until a customer told him it knocked out her eczema. That is how the name Noxzema was born. 35 cents for a jar in the 1950s. You scooped it with 2 fingers, spread it across your face, and let it sit. The tingle started at the temples. It felt cold, sharp, and alive when rinsed with warm water. The skin felt like it had been reset to 0. That jar sat on the bathroom counter of nearly every household in America. The skincare industry now sells cleansers for $30, $40, $60 that promise deep pore action. Noxzema was doing that for 35 cents when Eisenhower was president. Nobody needed the promise. They had the jar. But Noxzema was not the only thing on that bathroom shelf. Next to it sat a plain brown bottle with a label most people today would not recognize. And it may have been even more effective. Number 14. The Witch Hazel Toner. After washing, women soaked a cotton ball in witch hazel and swept it across the face. It tightened pores, reduced oil, and calmed redness overnight. Dickinson's witch hazel came in a brown glass bottle with a white label for 25 cents at the drugstore, distilled from the bark and leaves of the hamamelis shrub, a plant native to North America. The Haudenosaunee had been using it for skin ailments for centuries before the pharmacy even existed. There was an astringent sting on a cotton ball. There was a faint herbal smell, not perfume, not medicine, something in between. One sweep across the forehead, then the nose, then the chin. The cotton ball came away gray with oil and grime. The skin underneath was tight, matte, and calm. Dermatologists now confirm that witch hazel contains tannins with real antioxidant and astringent properties, which help calm inflammation. She already knew. The bottle cost $0.25 and lasted 3 months. Those 2 came in bottles from the drugstore. The next one needed nothing from the store at all, just boiling water and a clean towel. Number 13. The Hot Steam Facial. Women boiled water in a saucepan, poured it into a basin, and leaned over it with a towel draped over their head. The steam opened every pore and drew out the dirt and oil trapped inside. A large Pyrex mixing bowl on the kitchen table. Water just off the boil. A cotton dish towel tented over the head. The first wave of steam rising against closed eyelids. The quiet drip of moisture along the jaw. 5 minutes, sometimes 10. Some women dropped dried chamomile into the water. The smell mixed with the heat in a cloud that felt like both medicine and sanctuary. When she lifted the towel, the skin was flushed and the pores were open. A gentle press with a clean cloth, and the blackheads came out clean. The cost was nothing. Boiling water and a towel. The facial spas, now charging $90 for a steam extraction, are doing exactly what a mixing bowl and a dish towel did in 1953. Number 12. The Calamine Lotion Spot Treatment. Mothers dabbed calamine lotion directly onto pimples at bedtime. By morning, the blemish was dried out, the redness cut in half, the swelling nearly gone. The pink bottle in every medicine cabinet in America. 20 cents at the 5 and dime. The chalky pink liquid that separated if you did not shake it. dabbed on with a cotton ball or a fingertip. It dried to a powdery pink film on the skin, the unmistakable mark of a pimple being treated. You went to school with a faint pink spot on your chin. Nobody asked what it was because half the class had one too. The zinc oxide absorbed the oil. The iron oxide calmed the inflammation. It was made of just 2 minerals with no synthetic compounds and no laboratory. Calamine treated poison ivy. It treated bug bites. It treated acne. All for the same 20 cents. Nobody tried to make it do more than it did. Nobody tried to charge more for it either. And that is why it nearly disappeared from the conversation. But those first 4 came from the drugstore shelf. The next one did not come from the pharmacy at all. It came from the kitchen table, and it tasted like punishment. Number 11, cod liver oil, taken by the spoonful. Mothers gave their children a tablespoon of cod liver oil every single morning. It cleared skin from the inside out. The vitamins A and D reduced inflammation, regulated oil, and helped the skin heal itself. Scott's emulsion. The tall brown bottle with the fisherman on the label. 60 cents in the 1950s. The thick, oily liquid that coated the spoon and glistened under the kitchen light. The smell was sharp and marine and unmistakably fish. Children winced before the spoon reached their lips. Some mothers mixed it with orange juice. Some folded it into a teaspoon of honey. Most did neither. They just poured it, handed it over, and said, "Drink it." They took 1 tablespoon every morning with no negotiation. By the 3rd week, the skin was different. It was smoother, calmer, and had fewer breakouts. Modern dermatology now recognizes that vitamin A derivatives are the gold standard for treating acne. Accutane, the strongest prescription acne drug ever made, is a synthetic form of vitamin A. A course of Accutane costs over $400 today. Scott's emulsion cost 60 cents, and she poured it at breakfast. 5 remedies in, and notice what has happened. Every single one was already in the house. A jar on the shelf, a bottle in the cabinet, a saucepan on the stove, a spoonful from the kitchen counter. These women did not go looking for solutions. The solutions were already there, waiting. The acne industry was not built on better ingredients. It was built on convincing people that what they already had was not good enough. That required advertising, and advertising required shame. Number 10, the apple cider vinegar toner. Women diluted apple cider vinegar in water and applied it to the face with a cotton ball after washing. It balanced the skin, killed surface bacteria, and tightened the pores. Heinz apple cider vinegar, 23 cents a bottle. 1 part vinegar to 3 parts water in a glass jar on the vanity. Applied with a cotton ball after the evening wash. The sharp tang of fermented apples against the skin. A brief sting that faded in seconds. The acetic acid brought the surface down to a level where bacteria could not survive. That same mechanism is behind modern acid toners that sell for $28 an ounce. The bottle sat next to the salad dressing in the kitchen and next to the witch hazel in the bathroom. Nobody saw a contradiction in that. The toner aisle at any drugstore now holds 40 products. Every one of them is trying to do what a splash of vinegar did in 1954. Nobody could trademark vinegar. Number 9, the oatmeal paste. Mothers mixed plain oatmeal with warm water into a thick paste and spread it across their teenager's face. Left it to dry, rinsed it off. The skin was calmer, less red, visibly smoother. Quaker oats from the round cardboard canister, 25 cents. A handful ground to powder between 2 spoons or in the palm. Mixed with just enough warm water to form a paste. Spread across the cheeks, the forehead, the chin, the slow tightening as it dried. The faint smell of dry grain and warmth. After 15 minutes, it was rinsed with cool water. The compounds in the oats coated each pore with a thin film that held moisture in and locked irritants out. Modern science would not even name those compounds for another 40 years. The kitchen already knew what they did. Aveeno now sells colloidal oatmeal products in every pharmacy in the country. $22 a tube. The ingredient is the same. It came from a cardboard canister that also made breakfast. Number 8. The toothpaste spot treatment. Teenagers dabbed a small dot of white toothpaste directly onto a pimple before bed. By morning, the blemish was dried out and shrunken. Colgate dental cream came in a flat metal tube with a red stripe for 29 cents. A dot the size of a pea pressed onto the pimple with a fingertip. The baking soda and chalk in the formula absorbed the oil. The peppermint tingled and cooled. You went to sleep smelling like a dentist's office. You woke up with a dried white dot on your chin and a pimple half its size. Boys in high school did this on Friday afternoons before the dance. Girls did it Saturday nights before church. Nobody told them to. They told each other, whispered it in the hallway like a secret. It was not a beauty tip passed down from a magazine. It was passed sideways from friend to friend and locker to locker. The most effective acne treatments of that era did not have advertising budgets. They had word of mouth. That one came from the bathroom counter. The next one came from somewhere even more unlikely, the laxative shelf. Number 7. The Phillips Milk of Magnesia Mask. Women applied Phillips Milk of Magnesia directly to the face as a mask. They left it until it dried white and tight. Then they rinsed it off. The magnesium hydroxide absorbed excess oil and dried active blemishes overnight. Phillips Milk of Magnesia. The blue bottle, 35 cents. Patented in 1873 by a pharmacist named Charles Henry Phillips. It was a laxative, thick and chalky and white, meant for the stomach. But women discovered something. If you shook the bottle and poured a thin layer across the face, it pulled the oil right out of the skin like a poultice. The cooling tightness as it dried, the smooth feeling underneath when it was rinsed away, used overnight as a spot treatment. A white dot on each pimple, working while you slept. A laxative that doubled as the best oil-absorbing face mask in the house. Nobody on Madison Avenue could have sold that story. And yet it worked. That was the problem. It worked too well and cost too little. Number 6. The egg white mask. Women separated the white from a raw egg, whipped it lightly, and spread it across the face. Let it dry to a tight film. It shrank pores, reduced oil, and drew impurities to the surface. 1 egg from the icebox, 3 cents. The white separated into a teacup, whipped with a fork until slightly frothy. Spread across the face with the fingertips. Cool and slippery at first. Then the drying began. A slow, steady tightening that pulled the skin inward from every direction. You could feel it working. The proteins contracted as the moisture left, pressing the pores flat. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Rinsed with cool water. Never warm, or the egg cooked right onto the skin. Underneath, the skin was tighter, smoother, completely matte. The egg cost 3 cents. Half went on her face. The yolk went into the cake batter. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was purchased for only one purpose. That is a way of thinking the beauty industry had to dismantle before it could start selling. Notice something about every remedy so far. Not one of them was designed for acne. Noxzema was invented for sunburn. Calamine was for bug bites. Milk of magnesia was for constipation. Witch hazel was for cuts. Oatmeal was for breakfast. These women did not go searching for acne products. They looked at what was already on the shelf and asked a simple question. What else can this do? That instinct to repurpose, to improvise, to refuse to buy a separate solution for every separate problem was not poverty. It was intelligence. Number 5. The baking soda paste. A paste of Arm & Hammer baking soda and water, rubbed across the face as a scrub. While it exfoliated dead skin, its high alkalinity actually disrupted the skin's protective acid mantle. Arm & Hammer. The orange box with the muscled arm, 10 cents. 2 tablespoons mixed with enough water to form a gritty paste, rubbed in gentle circles across the nose, the chin, the forehead, the places where the blackheads lived. The fine grit worked against the skin like wet sand, rinsed and patted dry, or left on for 10 minutes as a mask until the paste dried white and tight. The sodium bicarbonate neutralized the acidity on the surface where bacteria multiplied. That box sat next to the refrigerator to absorb odors. It sat in the laundry room to brighten whites. It sat in the bathroom to scrub the sink. And once a week, it sat on a teenager's face and did what a $40 exfoliating scrub does now. 10 cents. 1 product. 7 uses. The global skincare market is now worth over $180 billion a year. That orange box outperformed most of it. Number 4. The Epsom Salt Hot Compress. A cloth soaked in warm water with dissolved Epsom salt, wrung out and pressed against the face. It drew out deep blemishes, reduced swelling, and softened the skin around the worst breakouts. Epsom salt from the carton under the bathroom sink. 15 cents a box. A tablespoon dissolved in a bowl of water as warm as the skin could stand. A clean washcloth soaked, wrung, folded, and pressed flat against the jaw, against the cheek, against the chin. Wherever the deep, angry blemish throbbed beneath the surface, the warmth opening the pore, the magnesium sulfate pulling the infection toward the surface, held in place until the cloth went cool. Re-soaked, repeated. Sometimes 3 rounds in a single sitting. The patience of a mother pressing a warm cloth against the face of a boy who will not look anyone in the eye at school. That compress was not cosmetic. It was care. The difference between a product and a remedy is that a product is bought. A remedy is given by someone who sees you. Number 3. The lemon juice spot treatment. The next 2 are so simple they barely qualify as remedies. And yet they are among the oldest treatments for troubled skin ever recorded. One grew on a tree, the other came from a hive. Fresh lemon juice applied directly to blemishes with a fingertip or a cotton ball. The citric acid killed bacteria, dried excess oil, and faded the dark marks left behind by old breakouts. A lemon cut in half on the kitchen counter. 5 cents. A few drops squeezed onto a cotton ball or straight onto the fingertip, pressed against the pimple. The sting was sharp and immediate. The citric acid acted as a harsh chemical exfoliant to cut through surface oil. However, leaving it on overnight or sitting in the sun with it was incredibly risky, as it could cause severe chemical burns or hyperpigmentation. Girls sat on porch steps in July with lemon on their faces and lemon in their hair, working the same fruit for 2 different purposes at the same time. The skincare industry now sells vitamin C serums for dark spots at $35, $50, or $70 a bottle. The active ingredient is ascorbic acid, the same acid in the lemon. The lemon cost a nickel. Number 2. The raw honey mask. Raw, unprocessed honey spread across the face and left for 20 minutes. It killed bacteria, reduced inflammation, and moisturized the skin without adding oil. It healed the damage at the same time. A jar of honey from the pantry shelf. Or from the beekeeper 3 farms down the road. thick and golden and slightly warm from sitting near the stove. Spread across the face with the back of a spoon, the slow pull of it against the skin. The faint smell of clover or wildflower depending on where the bees had been. It did not dry tight like the egg white. It sat heavy and warm and alive. The natural hydrogen peroxide in raw honey killed bacteria on contact. Nobody in the house knew the chemistry by name, but everybody knew it by result. The sugars drew moisture into the skin without triggering more oil. The natural compounds calmed the redness. 20 minutes under a warm cloth. Then rinsed with cool water. Skin that looked like it had been forgiven. Honey has been used for skin ailments since the Egyptians were building pyramids. Not as folklore, as medicine. Modern wound care facilities now use medical-grade honey to treat infections that antibiotics cannot touch. A jar of honey from the pantry was doing the same work in an American kitchen in 1954. 3,000 years of proof. And we stopped using it because someone put a celebrity on a tube of benzoyl peroxide. Number 1. The sulfur soap bar. A plain bar of sulfur soap, lathered and washed across the face once a day. It killed the bacteria that caused acne. It dried excess oil. It exfoliated dead skin. It cleared breakouts without a prescription. It was the single most effective thing you could buy over the counter in mid-century America for troubled skin. A pale yellow bar from the pharmacy counter. 10 cents, sometimes 15. The smell was unmistakable. Faintly mineral, like struck matches and hot springs. Not pleasant, not unpleasant. Medicinal, the kind of smell that told you something was working. Lathered with warm water. Worked across the face in slow circles. The lather was faintly gritty. Left on for 30 seconds, no more. Rinsed clean. A slight tightness that softened within the hour. Used once a day. Mornings. 7 days a week. By the second week, the breakouts were halved. By the fourth, the skin was clear. Not perfect, not porcelain, clear. Sulfur had been used for skin ailments since the Romans soaked in volcanic hot springs 2,000 years ago. The FDA still recognizes it today as safe and effective for acne. The yellow bar sat on the edge of the bathroom sink. It did not have a brand name anyone remembers. It did not have a spokesperson. It did not have a social media account. It just worked. A boy with bad skin walked into the Rexall in 1955. He put a dime on the counter. He walked out with the same active ingredient that dermatologists now compound into formulas costing $40 or more. Nobody told him it was ancient. Nobody told him it was science. His mother told him to wash his face with it, and he did. And it worked. And then one day, it was gone from the shelf. Replaced by a row of plastic bottles promising miracles in new and improved formulas. The formulas cost $12. The only thing that improved was the price. And somewhere right now, a grandmother is standing behind a teenager in the bathroom. She is twisting the lid off a blue glass jar, or pressing a warm cloth against a face that will not look up. No advice column, no product review, and no algorithm. Just a hand that already knows what to do, doing it one more time. And without a single word, the lesson begins again.
Clearing the skin was only the beginning. What comes next goes deeper, past the surface, into the lines, the firmness, the clock itself.
Number 25. Rendered animal fat on the face. Women rendered lard from pork fat or tallow from beef suet and rubbed it directly on their faces as night cream. No fragrance, no additives, just clean, rendered animal fat on bare skin. The fat was rendered in a cast iron pot on the cook stove. Slow for hours until it clarified into a smooth white solid. Strained through cheesecloth into a mason jar. Kept on the washstand or the windowsill where it stayed cool. A fingertip's worth rubbed across the cheeks, the forehead, around the eyes before bed. It melted on contact, warmed by the skin into a thin, invisible layer. No smell once it was rendered clean. Just the faint richness of something the body recognized as its own. Cost nothing. The fat came from the same hog that fed the family. The reason it works so well is now understood. The lipid structure of both lard and tallow is remarkably close to human skin. The fatty acids, the vitamins, the minerals. Our skin absorbs them almost without effort. Boutique brands now sell whipped tallow balm for $40 a jar. Last year, tallow skincare went viral online. Millions of young women discovered what their great-grandmothers never forgot. The ingredient did not change. The price did. But animal fat was only one piece of what she kept on that washstand. The bottle next to it came from the pharmacy, and it cost even less. Number 24. Cod liver oil every morning. Women and their children took a daily spoonful of cod liver oil, not for colds, but for their skin. Scott's emulsion came in the tall brown bottle, about 50 cents. The thick, fishy taste that children dreaded, but mothers insisted on. 1 tablespoon each morning, sometimes stirred into orange juice to mask the flavor. The oil was loaded with vitamins A and D, the exact same retinol that is now the single most recommended anti-aging ingredient in all of dermatology. She was swallowing prescription-grade retinol with her breakfast in 1933. A single bottle lasted a month. Every expensive retinol serum on the market today delivers the same vitamin A that a farm wife got from a spoonful of fish oil and a wince. Her skin glowed from the inside out. She did not have a word for it. She just knew the oil kept her looking well. The cod liver oil worked from the inside. What she did on the outside at the kitchen sink with an egg was even more immediate. Number 23. The EGG White Face Tightener. Women separated egg whites, beat them slightly, and painted them onto their faces. They let the whites dry completely. The skin pulled tight like a drum. 1 egg from the icebox. The white separated into a teacup, beaten 2 or 3 strokes with a fork, not whipped, just loosened, brushed across the forehead, cheeks, jawline with the fingertips. Then she sat still and waited. The albumin dried, transparent and contracted, pulling the skin taut. It felt like a mask made of paper. Fine lines vanished for hours. The tightness around the eyes was visible. She rinsed with cool water when she was ready to leave the house. Cost 3 cents. This was the original instant facelift. It worked because the protein physically contracted as it dried. No needle, no toxin, no recovery time. Just an egg and the patience to let it set. The injectable Botox market is now worth over $7 billion a year. The egg cost 3 cents and achieved the same visible result for an afternoon. She did not even need warm water. In fact, warm water was the one thing she learned never to waste on her face. Number 22. Cold water only on the face. Women wash their faces with cold water. Not lukewarm, not hot. Cold, straight from the pump or the tap. Hot water was a luxury. It was heated on the stove and rationed for bathing, for dishes, for laundry. No woman in a Depression-era household was going to burn fuel-heating water just for her face. She splashed cold water from the basin and dried with a rough cotton towel. The cold water closed her pores. It tightened the capillaries under her skin and reduced puffiness. The slight shock of the cold brought blood rushing to the surface. A pink, firm complexion before she had finished drying off. Modern dermatologists now recommend cool water for the face. Hot water strips natural oils and accelerates aging. She was right all along. Not because she read a study, but because she could not afford to be wrong. When the wind and cold weather threatened to undo all of it, she had something in her apron pocket that cost a dime. Number 21. Camphor ice on exposed skin. Women applied camphor ice to their cheeks, noses, lips, and hands before going outdoors in winter or wind. A small, inexpensive balm that built a barrier against the elements. Mentholatum in the small green tins. Or the plain camphor ice cake wrapped in foil at the pharmacy counter. 10 cents. The faint medicinal smell of camphor and menthol. A thin layer rubbed on the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose, the backs of the hands, the slight cooling tingle when it hit the skin. She slipped it back in her pocket and went out to hang laundry in January. Wind damage and environmental exposure are now recognized as major contributors to premature skin aging. She did not know the term environmental stressor. She knew what wind did to a face, and she stopped it with a tin that fit in the palm of her hand. 5 items in, and not one of them cost more than 50 cents. Lard from the kitchen, cod liver oil from the pharmacy, an egg from the hen house, cold water from the pump, a tin of camphor ice from the counter. The bathroom cabinet did not exist as we know it. The kitchen was the laboratory, and the kitchen did not send a bill. Number 20. Glycerin and rosewater. Women bought glycerin and rosewater pre-mixed at the pharmacy counter, or mixed it themselves. It was the original moisturizer, and it worked better than most of what replaced it. A small glass bottle, hand-labeled at the druggist's counter. 15 cents. 2 parts rosewater, 1 part glycerin, shaken gently. Applied with a cotton cloth or bare fingers after washing. The faint scent of rose. Not perfume, not artificial, just the ghost of the flower itself. The glycerin was a humectant. It drew moisture from the air and held it against the skin. A face that felt plump and dewy all day long in the dead of a Kansas winter. Glycerin is now the second most common ingredient in premium moisturizers. The only difference between that pharmacy bottle and a $60 department store cream is the label and the 70 years of marketing between them. Number 19. The raw honey mask. Women applied raw honey directly to their faces, left it for 20 minutes, and rinsed with warm water. A sticky, simple treatment that softened skin and fought blemishes. Honey from the neighbor's hive, or the glass jar on the pantry shelf. A generous spoonful rubbed between the palms to warm it, then pressed gently onto clean skin. The slow pull of it when she turned her head. Thick, amber, sweet-smelling. She sat in the kitchen and waited, 20 minutes of enforced stillness, reading the newspaper or shelling peas. Rinsed with a wet cloth. Skin that felt like polished wood underneath. Raw honey is a natural humectant and antibacterial. Monica honey masks now sell for $40 at the beauty counter. The honey she used came from a man up the road who kept 3 hives and asked nothing for it. But honey was only the beginning of what she found in the pantry. The real surprise was sitting in the buttermilk crock. Number 18. The buttermilk wash. Women washed their faces with buttermilk, the thin, tangy liquid left over from churning butter. It softened the skin and brightened the complexion. Leftover buttermilk from the morning's churning, not bought. Poured onto a soft cloth and pressed against the face, or splashed on like water. The faint sour smell of cultured milk. The cool, thin liquid running down the jawline into the basin. It was not rinsed off immediately. Left to sit for 10 minutes, then dabbed away. Skin that felt cool and smooth for the rest of the day. Buttermilk contains lactic acid, the same active ingredient now sold as AHA in clinical skincare lines. A lactic acid peel costs $85 at a dermatologist's office. The buttermilk was a byproduct. It had no name. It was just what was left after making butter. Number 17. The oatmeal paste. Women ground oatmeal fine, mixed it with warm water, and applied it to irritated or rough skin. It soothed inflammation and softened texture. Quaker oats came from the round cardboard canister. They were ground in a mortar and pestle or rolled with a glass jar on the counter until fine as flour. The oatmeal was mixed with warm water into a thick paste, then spread across the face and left to dry. There was a mild, bready smell of oats and warm water and a slight tightening as it dried. It was rinsed with a damp cloth. The skin underneath felt like it had been polished, as if treated with something impossibly gentle. A handful of oats from the same canister that made breakfast. The FDA recognized colloidal oatmeal as a skin protectant in 2003. Aveeno built an empire on it. She was using it 70 years earlier because her mother told her to, and her skin was proof enough. Number 16. Cornmeal as face scrub. Women wet yellow cornmeal and rubbed it in gentle circles across their faces. It removed dead skin and left the complexion bright and smooth. A tablespoon of yellow cornmeal from the sack in the pantry, dampened in the palm with a few drops of water, rubbed in small circles across the cheeks, forehead, and chin. The fine grit of the meal against the skin, not harsh, not sharp, just enough to polish. Rinsed clean. The face underneath glowed pink and new. 1 cent's worth of cornmeal from the same sack that made the evening cornbread. This was physical exfoliation. The removal of dead skin to reveal the younger layer beneath. A professional microdermabrasion session now costs $200. The principle is identical. The tool is different. The price is everything. Every one of these treatments came from the same place. Kitchen, buttermilk, oatmeal, cornmeal, honey. Egg. These women did not separate food from beauty. If it nourished the body from the inside, it nourished the skin from the outside. That was not ignorance. That was a unified understanding of health that the modern world dismantled. Not because it was wrong, but because it could not be sold in an aisle separate from the groceries. The separation was invented by people with something to sell. Number 15. Witch hazel. Every morning. Women splashed witch hazel on their faces every morning. It tightened pores, reduced inflammation, and prepared the skin for the day. Dickinson's witch hazel in the tall glass bottle. 25 cents at the drugstore. A splash on a cotton ball drawn across the forehead, cheeks, and nose. The cool, astringent tingle. The faint herbal scent, clean and sharp, like the forest floor after rain. By the Depression, every medicine cabinet in America had a bottle. She did not call it a toner. She called it freshening up. The bottle lasted months. It is still sold in the same style bottle today, and it still costs almost nothing, which is precisely why nobody advertises it. Number 14. Raw potato for puffiness and dark circles. Women cut thin slices of raw potato and laid them over their closed eyes. The starch and enzymes drew out puffiness and lightened dark circles. A small potato from the root cellar. Peeled, sliced thin as a coin. 2 rounds laid over closed eyes while she rested on the bed or reclined in the kitchen chair. The cool, damp weight of the potato against the eyelids. 15 minutes. Sometimes she fell asleep. The catecholase enzyme in the potato gently lightened pigmented skin. The starch absorbed excess fluid. She woke up looking 5 years younger around the eyes. Eye creams now cost $45 to $100 for half an ounce. The potato cost a penny. The difference is packaging. The chemistry is nearly the same. Number 13. Lemon juice on age spots. Women dabbed fresh lemon juice directly onto age spots and dark marks. Over weeks, the spots faded. A lemon cut in half on the kitchen counter. The sharp scent of citrus. The juice dabbed on with a fingertip directly onto the brown spots on the backs of the hands, the cheekbones, the temples. A slight sting, not rinsed off. Repeated daily for weeks. Gradually, the spots paled. The citric acid was a natural citric acid, and the same class of chemical now used in clinical brightening treatments and sold in dark glass dropper bottles for $65. The lemon cost a nickel. She used the other half to make lemonade. She did not think she was performing a chemical peel. She was just getting rid of the spots. But the most powerful pharmacy item on her shelf cost even less. And it did something the most expensive wrinkle creams still struggled to match. Number 12. Castor oil on wrinkles at night. Women rubbed a thin layer of castor oil around their eyes and mouths before bed. It softened fine lines and kept the skin supple. A small brown glass bottle of castor oil from the druggist. 15 cents. The thick viscous oil, heavier than water, clear and faintly golden. A drop on the fingertip, pressed gently around the eye, the corners of the mouth, the lines across the forehead. The slight tackiness of it before it absorbed. By morning, the skin felt softer, fuller, as though the lines had relaxed in the night. The ricinoleic acid in the oil was a powerful moisturizer that the skin absorbed completely. Castor oil in a designer dropper bottle now retails for $14 at the beauty counter. Her grandmother's version came from the same pharmacy where she bought aspirin. The molecule has not changed. The branding has. Number 11. Steaming the face over the cookpot. Women leaned over a pot of boiling water with a towel draped over their heads. The steam opened the pores, increased circulation, and deep cleaned the skin. A pot of water already on the stove, nothing heated specially for the purpose. She pulled a chair up, draped a cotton towel over her head and the pot, and leaned in. The bloom of hot steam against the cheeks, the droplets forming along the hairline. Eyes closed. 5 minutes. Sometimes a sprig of rosemary or a few dried chamomile flowers went into the water, the faint herbal scent rising through the steam. Pores opened. Blood rushed to the surface. When she lifted the towel, her face was flushed and glowing. A professional facial steam now costs $65 at a spa. She used the same water that was about to boil the potatoes for supper. There is something worth noticing about these tricks. Almost every single one required a woman to stop moving. The honey sat for 20 minutes. The egg whites dried slowly. The potato slices needed stillness. The steam required patience with eyes closed. These rituals forced rest into the day. They built waiting into the routine. That was not a weakness. That was the design. A woman who spent 12 hours on her feet in a kitchen and a garden was never going to sit down unless something made her. The beauty routine was her only excuse, and it may have been the wisest part of all. Number 10. They wore hats and never let the sun touch their faces. Women wore wide-brimmed hats, bonnets, bonnets, and long sleeves outdoors. They stayed in the shade. Direct sunlight on the face was avoided, as a matter of course. A cotton sunbonnet for field work, a wide-brimmed straw hat for town. Long sleeves even in July. The deep shade cast across the face by a brim 4 inches wide. She hung the laundry in the morning before the sun climbed high. She moved to the shaded side of the porch by noon. The pale skin underneath that brim, untouched by years of direct light. Dermatologists now estimate that up to 90% of visible skin aging is caused by ultraviolet radiation. Wrinkles, sagging, spots, texture, all from the sun. She avoided it because the culture told her to. The science proved her right 70 years later. The most powerful anti-aging product ever created is shade. And it has always been free. Number 9. Apple cider vinegar as skin toner. Women diluted apple cider vinegar in water and wiped it across their faces with a cloth. It balanced the skin's pH and restored its natural protective barrier. Heinz apple cider vinegar from the pantry shelf. 23 cents a bottle. 1 tablespoon stirred into a cup of cool water. Applied with a torn square of cotton cloth drawn across the forehead, nose, and cheeks. The faint, sharp scent vanished in minutes. The skin felt tighter, smoother, slightly cool. The acetic acid restored the skin's acid mantle, the invisible protective film that modern cleansers strip away twice daily. Skin pH balancing is now a multi-billion-dollar concept in the beauty industry. She did it with pantry vinegar and a rag. Nobody could patent vinegar, and that was the real problem. Number 8. Vaseline as overnight barrier cream. Women applied a thin layer of Vaseline petroleum jelly to their faces, lips, and hands before bed. It sealed in moisture all night long. Chesbro's Vaseline came in the small blue-lidded glass jar. 10 cents. A fingertip's worth spread thin across the cheeks, the forehead, the lips, the backs of the hands. The slight shine on the pillow in the morning. The skin underneath soft and hydrated. The petroleum jelly did not moisturize. It sealed. It created an invisible barrier that trapped the skin's own moisture against itself through the night. In 2022, a practice called slugging went viral on social media. Millions of young women filmed themselves applying Vaseline to their faces at night, as though they had invented something revolutionary. Their great-grandmothers were doing this in 1931. The jar has not changed. The price has barely moved. The rediscovery happens every generation because every generation forgets. Number 7. Bone broth every single day. Women simmered bones for hours. Chicken, beef, pork. They drank the broth or used it as the base for every soup, stew, and gravy. It was loaded with natural collagen, gelatin, and minerals that rebuilt skin from the inside. A soup pot on the back of the stove, never quite empty. Chicken carcass from Sunday dinner. Beef knuckles from the butcher, almost free because nobody else wanted them. Simmered low for 8, 10, 12 hours. The gelatin that gelled thick in the icebox overnight. A cup of warm broth with a pinch of salt, sipped at any hour. The rich, dense mineral flavor that coated the mouth. The collagen supplement industry is now worth over $7 billion globally. Powders, capsules, gummies, dissolving packets at $8 a serving. She was drinking the same collagen in broth form every single day, not because she read a wellness blog, but because she could not afford to waste a bone. The bone broth only begins to explain why their skin lasted. There was another ingredient, or one that came not from the kitchen, but from the barnyard, and it was so effective it barely seems real. Number 6. Lanolin from the wool. Farm women who worked with raw wool discovered that their hands stayed impossibly soft. The natural lanolin in sheep's fleece was a powerful skin protectant and moisturizer. The greasy feel of raw wool fresh from the shearing floor. The waxy, yellowish residue that clung to the hands after carding or sorting fleece. Women who worked with sheep had hands that never cracked, never dried, never showed their age. The lanolin, a natural wax secreted by the sheep's skin to protect the wool, was absorbed directly through the hands during work. No jar required, no application, just the act of handling the wool. Purified lanolin is now sold in pharmacies and cosmetic shops for $30 an ounce. marketed as a premium ingredient in luxury creams. She got it for free every shearing season without knowing its name. Her hands were the proof. The most powerful anti-aging interventions that emerged from the Depression era were not creams or masks or treatments. They were the conditions of life itself. These women did not choose austerity. It was forced upon them. They ate less, they moved more, they slept harder. They carried water uphill and scrubbed laundry by hand and walked to town in every kind of weather. And the science of the 21st century has now proven, study by study, that these exact conditions are the most effective anti-aging interventions ever measured. The last 5 items on this list are the proof. Number 5. They ate almost nothing. Depression-era families ate far fewer calories than Americans eat today. Not by choice, by necessity. And that involuntary caloric restriction may have been the most powerful anti-aging force of the era. A supper of beans and cornbread, a breakfast of black coffee and a biscuit, meat twice a week if you were lucky. No snacking. There was nothing to snack on. No processed sugar in quantity. No seed oils. No meals from packages. A woman in 1934 consumed perhaps 1,500 calories a day, maybe less. Her body was lean, not from dieting, but from scarcity. A landmark clinical trial led by the Columbia Aging Center showed that cutting caloric intake by just 12% over 2 years measurably slowed the pace of biological aging in healthy adults. 2 to 3% slower aging. That sounds small. But researchers estimated that if sustained over 10 to 15 years, that reduction could lower the risk of death by 10 to 15%. She did not know any of this. She just knew that money was short and supper was small, and her face at 50 looked like other women's faces at 40. The science arrived 70 years after the proof. Number 4. They walked everywhere and never stopped moving. Depression-era women were in near constant physical motion. They walked, hauled, lifted, scrubbed, gardened, hung laundry, and carried children. There was no sitting. They walked to market, a mile each way. They hauled water from the well, hung wet sheets on the line in the wind, scrubbed floors on hands and knees with a brush, kneaded bread, wrung laundry by hand, and bent over the garden for 3 hours every morning. She did not own a pair of athletic shoes. She did not have a gym membership. She moved from the moment she woke up to the moment she sat down at the end of the day. Modern science now recognizes sustained physical activity as one of the primary triggers for cellular autophagy, the body's process of clearing out damaged cells and regenerating new ones. It is the cellular equivalent of self-renewal. She did not call it exercise. She did not track her steps. She called it Monday. Number 3, they slept when the sun went down. Without television, without electric light in many homes, without screens of any kind, Depression-era women went to bed early and slept deeply. 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours of unbroken darkness. The kerosene lamp was turned low. The house was quiet by 8 o'clock. The complete darkness of a rural home with no streetlights, no glow from a screen, no notification chiming at midnight. The body's own melatonin production surged in the absence of artificial light. Deep, slow wave sleep, the stage during which the skin releases growth hormone, repairs collagen, and rebuilds tissue, happened every single night for decades. Dermatologists now call sleep the most underrated anti-aging tool in existence. Chronic sleep deprivation accelerates skin aging, breaks down collagen, and weakens the moisture barrier. She did not know any of this. She just turned out the lamp because there was nothing else to do. She woke up looking better than any woman running on 5 hours of sleep with a phone alarm ever will. Number 2, they barely washed their faces. Depression-era women washed their faces far less frequently than modern women do. Many used only cold cream to cleanse, never soap, never water directly on the skin. Some washed once a day at most. Their skin's natural barrier remained intact. Cold cream was the primary cleanser. A woman would apply it generously to dissolve the day's dust and powder. She wiped away the residue with a soft cloth. No foam cleansers, no double cleanse routine, no exfoliating wash, followed by a toner, followed by a serum, followed by a moisturizer. The skin's acid mantle, the delicate film of natural oils that protects against bacteria, moisture loss, and aging, was never stripped. It was preserved, intact, functioning as designed. Modern skincare has created a cycle. Harsh cleansers strip the skin, and the skin overproduces oil in response. More products are needed to control the oil, and they strip the skin further. A billion-dollar loop that her grandmother never entered. The movement, now called skin fasting, is a rediscovery of what these women practiced as a matter of course. They did not protect their skin barrier on purpose. They protected it because they could not afford to destroy it. Number 1. Pond's Cold Cream every single night. More than any other single product, Pond's Cold Cream defined the anti-aging ritual of the Depression era. Women applied it every night without exception. They cleansed with it. They moisturized with it. They went to bed with a thin layer still on their skin, and their faces stayed young. The jar sat on the vanity or the washstand. White milk glass, cool to the touch. The scent of rose and powder when the lid came off. A 2-finger scoop rubbed between the palms, then pressed into the skin. Forehead, cheeks, chin, neck, around the eyes. The cream melted on contact, a soft cloth to wipe away the day. Pond's had been a fixture in American homes since the early 1900s. By 1932, advertisements told women struggling with Depression-era hardships to save money by caring for their skin at home rather than paying for salon treatments. The jar cost 25 cents and lasted weeks. The cream was mineral oil, beeswax, and rose water. It cleansed, moisturized, and sealed the skin in a single step. She did it every night of her adult life. Pond's was created by a pharmacist named Theron T. Pond in Utica, New York in 1846. He had discovered that an extract from witch hazel could heal small cuts and ailments. He called the product Golden Treasure. It is still sold today. The jar is still white. The scent is still rose and powder. And the woman who used it every night of her life had skin at 70 that most 40-year-olds now pay a dermatologist to try to achieve. But it is not the cream that mattered most. It is the ritual. A woman alone at the washstand in the quiet after the house went dark. The cool glass jar in her hands, the slow circles on her face. It was the last thing she did before she turned out the light. And it was the first thing her granddaughter remembered when she was old enough to understand what had been lost. 25 tricks. Not one of them needed a dermatologist, a subscription box, or a credit card. They needed lard, a lemon, a jar of cold cream, and the belief that a woman already had everything she needed. Most of it already in her kitchen. And somewhere right now, a woman is unscrewing the lid of a jar her grandmother left behind. The cream is still cold. The scent is still rose. And without a single word, the lesson begins again.
Those Depression-era women proved that time could be slowed with almost nothing. A kitchen, a few ingredients, a habit that cost pennies. But the women who came after them discovered something just as powerful sitting on the dinner table every single night.
Number 12, the Knox Gelatin Beauty Tonic. Women dissolved a packet of unflavored Knox gelatin in warm water or juice and drank it every morning, not for dessert, not for cooking, for their skin and nails. Knox gelatin in the red box, 10 cents a packet at the A&P, 1 teaspoon stirred into a glass of warm water or mixed into orange juice at breakfast. The faint animal smell vanished the moment it dissolved. Women's magazines in the 1940s and 50s ran Knox ads explicitly promising stronger nails and smoother skin. Good housekeeping McCalls. Knox for Nails was an actual advertising campaign printed in full color on the back of women's magazines. The gelatin was partially hydrolyzed animal collagen. It provides the same foundational amino acids, though modern collagen peptides are fully hydrolyzed, so they dissolve easily in cold water without gelling. She bought it in the baking aisle. She drank it at the kitchen sink before the children came downstairs. It cost a dime. The beauty industry now sells the same protein powder with an influencer's name on the label. The ingredient did not improve. The price did, but the gelatin in that glass was only a fraction of what she was getting each day. The real supply came from a pot on the back burner that never fully cooled. Number 11. Chicken feet in the stock pot. Chicken feet, scrubbed, blanched, and simmered for hours, were the secret to stock that set solid when it cooled. That jelly was almost pure collagen. A pound of chicken feet at the butcher, 5 to 8 cents. The knobby, yellow, scaled appearance that made children stare. Blanched for 2 minutes in boiling water, the outer skin peeled away, then dropped into the stock pot with an onion, a carrot, a bay leaf. 6 hours at a low simmer. The stock that came out was golden and thick as syrup. Poured into a bowl and set in the icebox overnight, it went firm enough to slice. That wobble when you tap the bowl with your fingernail, that was collagen, dense, pure animal protein. Common in Black Southern kitchens, Appalachian kitchens, immigrant kitchens, anywhere a woman understood you used every part of the bird. The women who bought chicken feet were not poor, they were practical. They knew that the part of the animal the grocery store eventually threw away held the most value. That knowledge did not come from a nutrition label. It came from a mother who never wasted a thing. And chicken feet were only the beginning. There was another cut right beside them in the butcher's case that most people alive today would not even recognize. Number 10. Pickled pig's feet called trotters, were simmered low, then pickled in spiced vinegar brine. They were kept in glass jars in the pantry or the icebox. They were one of the most collagen-dense foods in the American diet. A jar of pickled pig's feet sat on the counter at the corner store. The vinegar brine was cloudy with dissolved gelatin. You could taste the soft, yielding texture of the skin and the cartilage between your teeth, the meat pulling clean from the small bones. Brands included Van de Kamp's and Hormel, 15 to 20 cents for a pint jar. They were common across the South, through Appalachia, in every Black American community with roots in the country. They served as a bar snack and a Sunday afternoon food. There was the sharp tang of vinegar and the richness of pork gelatin dissolving on the tongue. Today, most Americans under 50 have never seen one. The jars are gone from the store counters. The knowledge of how to make them left with the women who did. It was not a delicacy. It was ordinary, a man's lunch pail, a grandmother's kitchen, a food so common it did not need a recipe, just a jar and a week of patience. Number 9, liver and onions every single week. Pig's feet required patience. The next item required only a cast iron skillet and a mother who did not flinch. Beef liver or calf's liver, sliced thin, fried with onions in a cast iron pan. It appeared on American tables at least once a week. It was one of the richest sources of vitamin A, copper, and iron. When combined with vitamin C from vegetables, these nutrients provide the essential sparks your body needs to synthesize its own collagen. Calves' liver from the butcher cost 25 to 30 cents a pound, cheaper than ground beef. It was soaked in a bowl of milk for an hour to draw out the mineral bite, dredged in flour, salt, and pepper, fried in butter or bacon drippings until the edges crisped. Onions sliced thin and cooked slow until they went soft and sweet. The iron-rich smell filled the kitchen, reaching the hallway, drifting up the stairs. The texture inside was soft, almost creamy, with a seared crust that crumbled at the edge. Children either loved it or they endured it. There was no third option. The plate was not optional. You sat there until it was done. She did not serve it because she liked it. She served it because her children needed it. That was the difference between feeding a family and following a preference. Liver came from the butcher's counter and required a skilled hand, but some of the most potent collagen foods came in a tin so small it fit in the palm of your hand. Number 8. Sardines eaten whole, skin, bones, and all. Canned sardines eaten with everything intact. The skin was rich in collagen. The soft, edible bones supplied calcium. Together they delivered what no boneless fillet ever could. A flat tin of King Oscar or Beach Cliff sardines, 10 to 15 cents, packed in olive oil, mustard sauce, or tomato, eaten on saltine crackers for lunch, laid on toast with a thin slice of raw onion, or straight from the tin with a fork while standing at the counter between jobs. The soft crunch of the tiny vertebrae between your teeth, the silver skin glistening with oil. A food so nutrient-dense, the United States military included it in combat rations during both World Wars. A common working man's lunch at the factory or the loading dock, a tin of sardines, a sleeve of crackers, and a glass of cold buttermilk. The tin cost less than a cup of coffee. Nobody called it a superfood. They called it Tuesday. Something worth noticing at this point, not one of these foods was marketed as a beauty product. No label said anti-aging, no package promised youthful skin. These women were not trying to look young. They were feeding families with what was available and what they could afford. The collagen was incidental. It came inside food that was eaten for survival, for economy, for tradition. The beauty was a side effect of a diet that had not yet been redesigned for shelf life and convenience. That is the part no supplement powder in a $40 tub can replicate. Number 7. Head cheese, a cold cut made by simmering a whole pig's head until the meat fell from the bone. The meat was picked, pressed into a loaf pan, and set in its own natural gelatin. Sliced cold, eaten on bread, a whole pig's head from the butcher, 50 to 75 cents, simmered with onion, celery, vinegar, pickling spices, and bay leaves for 5 to 6 hours. The meat picked from the skull by hand at the kitchen table, pressed into a loaf pan with the cooking liquid poured over. The natural gelatin from the skull, skin, and cartilage set the loaf solid overnight in the icebox. Sliced thin for sandwiches the next morning. Common in German American, Polish American, and Southern households from coast to coast. Called sows in some parts of the country, sold at the delicatessen counter at the A&P, at Piggly Wiggly, at every neighborhood butcher. A woman who could make head cheese could feed a family for a week from a part of the animal the modern grocery store sends straight to rendering. Most shoppers today would not recognize it behind the deli glass. That was not poverty. That was intelligence passed down through kitchens that understood the value of every ounce. Head cheese used the whole head. The next food used what most cooks threw away after the roast and turned it into something worth driving across town for. Number 6, oxtail soup. Oxtail, the tail of a steer, slow braised for hours with root vegetables. The connective tissue and cartilage melted into the broth. It created one of the richest natural collagen sources in the American kitchen. Oxtail from the butcher at 10 to 15 cents a pound, a throwaway cut in 1954, browned in lard or beef drippings in a heavy Dutch oven. Then simmered 4 to 5 hours with carrots, celery, onion, turnip, and barley. The broth turned dark and glossy as it cooked. The meat fell from the vertebrae in soft ribbons. The gelatin so concentrated that the broth set solid in the icebox by morning. Recipes in the 1946 edition of The Joy of Cooking treated oxtail soup as standard weeknight fare. Today, that same cut sells for $8 to $12 a pound. A specialty item at the gourmet butcher counter, the cheapest cut at the butcher became the richest broth on the stove. That reversal tells you everything about what was lost when Americans started buying food by appearance instead of substance. Oxtail was a food that rewarded patience. But there is one food so old, so far removed from the modern kitchen, that most Americans alive today have never heard its name spoken out loud. Number 5. Calves' foot jelly. A clear, trembling jelly made by boiling calves' feet for hours, straining the liquid and letting it set. Given to the sick, the recovering, and the elderly as a restorative, it was pure collagen in edible form. 2 calves' feet from the butcher, 15 to 20 cents, split, scrubbed clean, soaked overnight in cold water, then simmered for 8 hours with a curl of lemon peel and a stick of cinnamon, strained through muslin cloth into a bowl, poured into small molds. It's set firm and clear as amber, flavored sometimes with a splash of sherry or lemon juice and a spoonful of sugar, a convalescent food going back centuries. Referenced in Fanny Farmer's cookbook and in Mrs. Beaton's household guides. Given to women after childbirth, to elderly parents losing weight and growing frail, to children recovering from fever, the way it trembled on the spoon, the faint sweetness, the cool, clean feel on the tongue. It was the food you made when someone you loved was too weak to eat anything else. It was not a recipe, it was an act of care that took the better part of a day. Calves' foot jelly was made with devotion and time. The next item was sliced right at the butcher counter and carried home wrapped in brown paper. Most modern shoppers would walk right past it without a second look. Number 4. Beef tongue. Whole beef tongue simmered for hours, peeled, sliced thin, and served cold or warm. The dense muscle was rich in collagen, healthy fat, and natural gelatin. A whole beef tongue from the butcher, 30 to 40 cents a pound, 3 to 4 pounds of solid meat. Simmered with black peppercorns, bay leaf, and a halved onion for 3 to 4 hours until completely tender. The thick outer skin peeled away in one piece while still warm, sliced thin against the grain with a sharp carving knife. Served cold on rye bread with brown mustard at the kitchen table, or warm with horseradish sauce on a Sunday. The texture was dense, fine-grained, almost buttery on the tongue. A standard item at every Jewish delicatessen, common in German-American homes and across the Midwest, sitting right beside the corned beef and pastrami at the deli counter, as ordinary as sliced ham. A cut of meat that required a woman to look at something unlovely and recognize its value. That skill applied to much more than cooking. Every one of these 12 foods shares something beyond collagen. They all required time, hours of simmering, overnight soaking, patient skimming with the slotted spoon, a woman standing at the stove in the late afternoon, checking the pot, adjusting the flame. These foods could not be rushed, they could not be microwaved, they could not be ordered from a delivery app at 11 o'clock at night, and the body that absorbed them could not be replicated by a capsule swallowed in 2 seconds on the way out the door. The collagen was not just in the food, it was in the waiting. Number 3. Roasted marrow bones. Beef marrow bones roasted in the oven or simmered in the stock pot. The marrow was scooped out and spread on toast or stirred into soup. The empty bones went into the stock pot afterward. Nothing was thrown away. Marrow bones from the butcher, cut into 3-inch pieces, 5 to 10 cents a pound, often given away free if you were a regular customer and the butcher knew your name. Roasted in the oven at high heat until the marrow turned soft and golden in the center. Scooped out with a narrow spoon or the tip of a butter knife. Spread on a warm slice of bread with a pinch of coarse salt. The taste, rich, almost sweet, deeper than butter, the way it melted on warm bread and disappeared. Children watching their father crack a bone at the head of the Sunday table. After the marrow was gone, the bones went straight into the stock pot. 1 ingredient, 2 uses, 0 waste. A father at the head of the table cracking a roasted bone and handing the first warm taste to his youngest child. That was not a meal, that was a lesson in what matters. Marrow bones were the quiet luxury, but the true centerpiece of collagen in the American home, the one food that held every family dinner together, was simpler, slower, and far more powerful than anything else on this list. Number 2, the Sunday pot roast. Chuck roast, bottom round, or brisket, the cheapest, toughest cuts of beef in the case. Braised low and slow for 3 to 4 hours in a covered Dutch oven. The connective tissue broke down entirely into gelatin. The meat fell apart at the touch of a fork. The gravy set solid in the icebox overnight. A 3-pound chuck roast from the A&P, 49 to 59 cents a pound. seared hard in a hot Dutch oven until dark brown on every side. The sizzle and the smoke rising to the ceiling, laid on a bed of quartered onions, carrots cut thick, and whole potatoes, a cup of water or stock poured down the side, lid on into a low oven, 275 degrees, for 3 to 4 hours. The smell that filled the house from noon until the table was set. The gravy that thickened as it cooled because it was loaded with dissolved collagen from every tendon and sinew in that cheap cut. Spooned over mashed potatoes, sopped up with torn bread, the particular tenderness of a tough cut that had been given enough time to surrender. She bought the cheapest cut in the case. She gave it 4 hours of her Sunday afternoon, and she put a meal on that table that her children remembered 50 years later. The expensive cuts did not need her skill or her patience. The cheap one did. And that was the one that held everything together. The pot roast sat at the center of the table every Sunday. But behind it, on the back of the stove, something else had been simmering even longer. Something so ordinary she never once thought to mention it. And it may be the most important food on this entire list. Number 1, bone broth made from scratch every single week, a stock pot on the back burner, bones from the week's meals, the chicken carcass from Sunday dinner, beef knuckles from the butcher at 5 to 10 cents a pound, pork neck bones. All of it dropped into the big pot on Monday morning with water, 1 onion, a few peppercorns, and a splash of vinegar to pull the minerals from the bones. Low flame. All day long. The kitchen windows fogged by noon, the smell that met the children at the front door after school. Savory, deep, warm, unmistakable. Strained through a colander lined with cheesecloth into wide-mouth mason jars. A thick cap of golden fat rising to the surface by morning. That broth went into everything. Spooned into soups, stirred into gravies, used as the cooking liquid for rice and beans and stewed vegetables, used to braise the next roast, used to thin the mashed potatoes, stirred into a sick child's cup to settle the stomach. The invisible base layer of nearly every meal that came out of that kitchen. It was not a product, it was a practice. The global collagen supplement market is now worth over $9 billion a year. Powders, capsules, gummies, flavored drink mixes in pastel packaging. The industry is selling women the same thing their grandmothers got for free from a stock pot and a Sunday roast. She did not call it bone broth, she called it stock. She did not buy it, she made it. From bones the butcher would have discarded. From a carcass that had already fed her family once. She turned what was finished into something that started the next meal. That pot on the back of the stove never really went empty, it just kept going, and so did she.
The food kept the skin firm from the inside out. But there was something else they reached for every single morning that cost less than a penny and changed the way they faced the mirror.
Number 15. A woman mixed a tablespoon of Arm & Hammer baking soda with a capful of hydrogen peroxide from the brown bottle in the medicine cabinet. She stirred it into a gritty paste on a saucer and brushed with it once a week. The mixture bubbled and fizzed the moment the 2 ingredients touched. The paste tasted like chalk and tin. She spread it across the bristles of a nylon toothbrush and scrubbed for 2 minutes. Baking soda acted as a gentle abrasive to buff away surface stains. Peroxide chemically whitened the enamel underneath. A box of Arm & Hammer cost a dime. A bottle of peroxide cost 15 cents. Together they lasted months. Total cost per brushing, a fraction of a penny. The whitening industry now sells this exact combination in a plastic syringe for $39 and calls it a breakthrough. She made it on a saucer with a butter knife. She did not need the packaging. She needed the paste. That paste was the heavyweight. But most nights she did not even bother mixing anything. She reached for something simpler, something her children peeled at the kitchen table after school and tossed in the trash without a second thought. Number 14. She rubbed the white inner side of a fresh orange peel directly across her teeth for 2 or 3 minutes, then rinsed thoroughly with water. Unlike the acidic flesh of the fruit, the white pith contains D-limonene, a natural stain remover that helped polish her smile without the high acid content. The inside of the rind, the white pith, was the part that worked, slightly gritty, faintly sweet. The oils left her fingertips smelling like citrus for an hour. She held the peel between her thumb and forefinger and rubbed it along the front teeth in small circles. The mild citric acid lifted stains from the enamel surface. Nothing was wasted in that house, not the peel, not the rind, not the knowledge that something free could do what something expensive only claimed to. The orange cost 3 cents. The smile was the change. She used the scraps from the fruit bowl. But there was something else in the kitchen, something in a glass bowl on the counter that she ate almost every day, and it was cleaning her teeth without her even knowing it. Number 13. She ate a raw apple every day. Not for her teeth, for everything. But that apple was quietly scrubbing the stains off her enamel with every single bite. A wine sap or a Macintosh from the barrel at the market. 2 cents apiece in season. The firm flesh acted as a natural abrasive against the tooth surface. The crunch, the snap of the skin breaking, the flood of juice across the gums. Apples contain malic acid. That same compound is now extracted and sold in whitening serums for $35 an ounce. Saliva production spiked with every bite, and saliva is the mouth's own rinse cycle. She did not call it oral care. She called it lunch. An apple, a wedge of cheddar, and a glass of water at the kitchen table. That was not a whitening routine. That was a Tuesday in 1954. It worked better than a $40 strip stuck to your teeth in the dark. That apple came from the kitchen. But the next secret came from the same room. Not the fruit bowl. The pantry shelf, a brown glass jug that sat behind the flour tin and smelled like something no child would drink willingly. Number 12. A highly diluted splash of apple cider vinegar was occasionally used as an old-school rinse, followed immediately by a thorough flushing of plain water to protect the teeth. While its acetic acid targeted bacteria, women had to be incredibly careful not to overdo it. The brown jug of Heinz, or a local farm brand, sat in the pantry next to the molasses and the vanilla extract. The smell was sharp enough to water your eyes. She poured a capful, swished it like mouthwash, and spat into the sink. Then she rinsed with plain water. The acetic acid dissolved stains and killed bacteria. Cost per use, less than half a cent. That jug cleaned the sink. It cleared a sore throat. It kept the drain from clogging. And once a week, it cleaned her teeth. 1 bottle, 14 uses. Not one of them required a brand name or a dentist's note. The jug did not come with instructions for any of this. She already knew. That was the point. That jug belonged to the pantry, but the next item belonged to the living room, specifically the television set. If you were alive in 1956, you already know the jingle. You just forgot where you learned it. Number 11. Ipana toothpaste, the flat white tube with red lettering. Manufactured by Bristol Myers. Wintergreen flavor. A tube cost around 39 cents. In the 50s, Ipana used a cartoon mascot created by Disney animators named Bucky Beaver. He was voiced by Mouseketeer Jimmy Dodd, who also wrote and composed the famous jingle. That beaver appeared on Saturday morning cartoons and evening broadcasts from coast to coast. Bristol Myers filled the pages of Better Homes and Gardens, True Stories, and McCall's with monthly ads. Bucky became a household name from 1955 through the early 70s. Every mother in the country knew the tube. Every child knew the beaver. The children brushed because a cartoon told them to. The mother brushed because her mother told her to. Both methods worked. Only one cost a marketing budget. Ipana had its cartoon beaver. But the next toothpaste had something stranger, a secret ingredient that did not exist. A word invented by an advertising man that fooled an entire country for decades. And it cleaned teeth anyway. Number 10. Pepsodent, introduced in 1915 by the Pepsodent Company of Chicago. The tube was red and white. The taste was minty and warm from the sassafras. The famous slogan promised you would wonder where the yellow went when you brushed your teeth with Pepsodent. The company claimed it contained a miracle ingredient called irium. In reality, irium was simply a clever trademarked name for sodium lauryl sulfate, a common foaming agent found in nearly everything. Pepsodent also promoted something it called IMP, a supposed whitening compound. It sponsored Bob Hope's radio show on NBC for nearly 10 years. A paste that advertised an ingredient that never existed outsold everything in America for 3 decades. The teeth got white anyway. The secret was never irium. The secret was that people brushed every single day. Twice. Without being reminded by an app. Without a subscription delivering replacement heads to the door. A tube, a brush, and a habit installed in childhood that nobody needed to sell them twice. 10 items in, and look at what has appeared so far. An orange peel, an apple, a jug of vinegar, 2 tubes of toothpaste that cost less than a pack of gum. Not one of these required electricity, a prescription, or an appointment. Every single one was already inside the house. The 20th century did not discover teeth whitening. It discovered how to charge for it. And the generation that came before the charge had better teeth than the generation that came after. Number 9. She walked to the herb garden, picked a fresh sage leaf, and rubbed it directly across her teeth. That was the entire process. The gray-green leaf had a velvety texture, and the taste was slightly bitter and earthy on the tongue. Since medieval times, people used sage to whiten their teeth and strengthen the gums. Many toothpastes on the shelf today are still based on sage extract. Without the tube, a fresh leaf does the same work. The essential oils have astringent properties that tighten gums and reduce inflammation. A sage plant cost nothing once it was in the ground. It came back every spring without asking. A woman who grew sage was not buying whitening strips. She was growing them. 16 inches from the back door, next to the thyme and the parsley. The garden had no aisle, no checkout lane, just what she needed. When she needed it, the sage came from the garden. But the next secret came from the kitchen sink, from the leftover rind of something she had already squeezed into the iced tea. Number 8. After squeezing a lemon for cooking or lemonade, she rubbed the white pith of the rind across her teeth. She let it sit for 1 minute, then rinsed. The sharp citrus scent filled the bathroom. The slight pucker at the gum line, not the yellow zest. The soft, white pith underneath. After squeezing a lemon for cooking, some women use the leftover rind as a quick polish, though modern dentists warn that the intense acidity of lemons can severely strip your enamel if left to sit. A lemon cost 2 cents. She had already used it for the pie or the fish. The rind was a bonus. She used the juice for cooking, the zest for flavor, the rind for her teeth. Then the rest went into the disposal. Nothing in that lemon went to waste. That was not frugality. That was architecture. Every part of everything had a second purpose, and she knew them all. That lemon belonged to the kitchen. But the next item came from the bathroom shelf. A small turquoise tin with a metal lid that predated toothpaste itself. If you are under 50, you have probably never seen one. Number 7. Dr. Leon's Tooth Powder. Established in 1866 by a practicing dentist in New Jersey. Before toothpaste came in tubes, American families used tooth powder, a dry, fine-grained powder shaken onto a wet toothbrush. The turquoise tin with navy blue lettering had a small metal cap that unscrewed to reveal a sifter top. Inside was a careful blend of sodium bicarbonate, calcium carbonate, and powdered cuttlebone. The label promised no drugs, no grit, no pumice, no acid, and no harmful ingredients. Finer than baking soda. It tasted clean and faintly chalky. A tin cost about 25 cents and lasted for months. By 1949, toothpaste had captured 75% of the American market. The tin vanished from shelves. The tube replaced it. The tube cost more, performed no better, and needed a redesign every 2 years to keep selling. That tin just sat on the shelf. Same shape, same job, year after year. No rebrand, no limited edition, no influencer holding it up to a ring light. The tooth powder came in a tin, but the next method came in nothing at all. It arrived from the garden in June and stained her fingertips red. Number 6. She mashed a ripe strawberry with a fork, rubbed the pulp across her teeth with her finger, let it sit for 2 minutes, and rinsed. June berries from the backyard patch. The small ones, not the oversized greenhouse variety, crushed in a saucer with the back of a fork, seeds and all. The sweet tart taste on the gums, the pink stain on the porcelain sink. Strawberries contain malic acid, a natural enzyme with whitening properties. It dissolves surface discoloration and triggers extra saliva production. She rinsed and followed with regular toothpaste. Cost, nothing. The berries grew beside the fence. The modern beauty industry sells fruit enzyme whitening serums for $35 an ounce. The active ingredient is the same malic acid that sat in a bowl of June strawberries on a kitchen counter 70 years ago. She was not behind the science. She was the source. 6 items remain, and every single one of them costs less than a nickel. What you are looking at is not a list of whitening tricks. It is a record of a time when Americans solved their own problems. They did not wait for a product launch. They did not scroll through an article. They opened the cupboard, the medicine chest, or the spice rack and made something work. That instinct did not die of old age. It was sold out from underneath them. Number 5. She uncapped the brown bottle of hydrogen peroxide from the medicine cabinet and swished a diluted capful for 60 seconds. The dark brown glass with the white label. Every medicine cabinet in America had one. 15 cents at the drugstore. She poured a capful, mixed it with equal parts water from the tap, swished it like mouthwash, and spat. The foaming on the gums, the faint metallic taste. That fizz was the peroxide doing its work. Hydrogen peroxide is a natural bleaching agent that kills bacteria on contact. The same compound that sat in her medicine cabinet for 15 cents is the active ingredient in every professional whitening treatment sold today. Every strip, every custom tray, every $500 in-office procedure. She had the ingredient. She just did not have the invoice. The bottle also cleaned cuts on a child's knee, disinfected the cutting board, and lightened the grout between the bathroom tiles. One brown bottle, one shelf. More uses than she ever bothered to count. That peroxide came from the drugstore, but the next one came from a place nobody thinks to look. The spice rack above the stove, behind the cinnamon and the nutmeg. A small tin most people only reached for at Thanksgiving. Number 4. She mixed a pinch of cream of tartar with a few drops of lemon juice into a thin paste and brushed with it once a week. Potassium bitartrate. It was a fine white powder, a byproduct of winemaking, sold in small tins on the spice shelf. the same ingredient she used to stabilize meringue for the Christmas pie. Mixed with a squeeze of lemon, it formed a mildly abrasive, faintly acidic paste. The taste was sour and chalky. A tin cost 10 cents and lasted a full year. She applied it on a soft brush once a week, then rinsed clean. Cream of tartar made the pie filling set. It made the snickerdoodles crackle on top. And once a week, it polished the coffee stains right off her teeth. 1 tin, 3 uses. No label claiming to change her life. It just did its job and went back on the shelf. She did not need to understand the chemistry. She just needed to know it worked. And she did, because her mother had told her, and her mother's mother before that. That spice rack held a secret. But the next secret did not come from any shelf at all. It came from the kitchen table, from a round blue container with a girl holding an umbrella. And it did not cost a dime. It cost nothing. Number 3. She wet her finger, pressed it into the salt, and rubbed it across her teeth. Or she dissolved a spoonful in warm water and swished. Morton's salt, the round blue canister with the girl in the yellow dress. Already in every kitchen in America. Already paid for. She dampened her index finger, pressed it into the coarse crystals, and scrubbed each tooth in small circles. The grit. The sharp, clean bite on the gums. Then a warm water rinse. Salt is a mild abrasive and a natural antiseptic. It pulled moisture from bacteria and left the mouth cleaner than it found it. Cost per use, nothing. The salt was already there. Salt preserved the meat. Salt drew moisture from the cucumbers for canning. Salt melted ice on the front step in January. And salt kept her teeth white for 60 years. 1 ingredient, 500 uses, no subscription required. That salt sat next to one thing on the kitchen shelf, the same thing found in every American home from 1920 to 1970. A yellow box with a red circle and a flexed arm. If you grew up in that house, you already know what it is. Number 2. A wet toothbrush dipped directly into the open box of Arm & Hammer baking soda. Brushed for 2 minutes. Rinsed. Done. The yellow box with the flexed arm logo. Church & Dwight, founded in 1846. Baking soda has been cleaning American teeth for over 100 years. A half-pound box cost 8 to 10 cents. It sat on the counter next to the stove. She dipped the damp bristles right into the open box. The faintly salty, slightly chalky taste. No mint, no flavor, just clean. The gentle abrasive power scrubs away surface stains and reveals brighter enamel underneath. It also neutralizes the acids in the mouth that break down tooth structure over time. That box cleaned her teeth. It deodorized the icebox. It scrubbed the sink. It smothered a grease fire. It soothed a bee sting on a child's arm. 10 cents. It did the work of 10 products that had not been invented yet. Today, the dental aisle carries 47 toothpaste options. She had 1 yellow box, and her teeth were whiter than yours. Nobody told her that was remarkable. In that house, it was just Tuesday morning before breakfast. That yellow box was the king of the kitchen shelf. But there is one more. And it is the one that will stop you cold. It cost nothing. It came from no store. It required no recipe. And it vanished so completely from American life that almost no one alive today has ever tried it. It came from the fireplace. And what she did with it sounds impossible. Number 1. She dipped a damp cloth into the cooled white ash from the fireplace, rubbed it across her teeth, and rinsed. Hardwood ash from oak, maple or hickory, cooled in the firebox overnight, fine and powdery, almost silky between the fingers. She scooped a pinch with a damp rag, rubbed it gently across her front teeth, and rinsed with a cup of water from the kitchen. Wood ash contains potassium carbonate, which creates a highly alkaline environment that chemically lifted organic stains. The taste was faintly metallic and faintly alkaline, and gone in seconds. It cost absolutely nothing. The fire had already been lit for warmth or for cooking. The ash was already sitting in the hearth. Ancient Egyptians used it. Native Americans used it. Hippocrates himself recommended it. One woman remembered her childhood, how the family gathered soot from the wood-burning fireplace because store-bought powder was far too expensive for a large family. They used the soot, and their teeth were white. The fire warmed the house. The ash whitened the teeth. Nothing was bought. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was marketed. A woman knelt at the hearth, touched her finger to the ash, and solved a problem that an $11 billion industry still pretends is complicated. It was never complicated. It was just forgotten. And forgetting it was not an accident. It was a business plan.
A bright smile was only one part of the morning ritual. The last practice in this video is the one that held everything together, from root to tip.
Number 17. Families collected rainwater in barrels and cisterns and used it specifically for washing hair. Tap water was for dishes, rainwater was for hair. That was the rule in homes across rural America. A wooden barrel at the corner of the house beneath the gutter downspout, water dipped out with a tin dipper, naturally soft, zero calcium, zero mineral buildup. No limescale coating each strand the way hard water does, wash after wash. Hair rinsed in rainwater dried softer and lighter than anything that ever came out of city pipes. Women in Appalachia, the Ozarks, and the rural Midwest swore their hair was thickest during rainy springs. They were not imagining it. Hard water deposits calcium and magnesium on every strand. Rainwater deposits nothing. She did not buy purified water in a plastic jug. She waited for the sky to provide it. The rain barrel is gone from every American home. The hard water remains, but even the women who had no rain barrel knew something about their tap water that most people today have forgotten. Number 16. Women added a teaspoon of 20 Mule Team borax to their wash water to soften it before it touched their hair. Hard water leaves a film. The borax dissolved that film before the washing began. 20 Mule Team borax, the box with the Mule Team on the front, 15 cents in 1952. 1 teaspoon dissolved in a basin of warm water. The water felt slippery, almost silky between the fingers. Soap lathered twice as easily, hair rinsed clean without the chalky residue that hard water leaves behind. Women in limestone country in Indiana, Ohio, Central Texas treated this as essential, not optional. She understood the water mattered as much as the soap. That knowledge vanished when the shower head replaced the basin. Today, 85% of American homes have hard water. Nobody thinks about it. The hair pays for it every morning. And speaking of what she reached for instead of shampoo, the bar of soap on that saucer was doing something no liquid detergent has done since. Number 15. Before liquid shampoos took over in the late 1950s, most women washed their hair with bar soap, Castile soap, Ivory, olive oil bars. The soap cleaned without stripping, Kirk's Castile at 10 cents, Ivory at a nickel. Rubbed between the palms until a soft, creamy lather formed, worked into the scalp with the fingertips. The lather was thinner than modern shampoo, no mountain of suds. That foam is a detergent trick. It signals cleaning to the brain but adds nothing to the hair. The bar soap rinsed clean in 2 passes. Hair kept its natural oil coating intact. The faint smell of tallow and glycerin, not synthetic fragrance. The beauty industry spent 50 years teaching women that FOAM meant clean. A bar of soap that cost a nickel washed hair for a month? The profit margin was too small. That was its only flaw. But before the soap touched her hair, there was a step she never skipped. One that modern science is only now beginning to understand. Number 14. Women brush their hair thoroughly before every wash, often the full 100 strokes. This distributed the scalp's natural oils down the shaft, and loosened dirt so the wash needed less soap and less scrubbing. A boar, bristle brush, wooden handle worn smooth. She pulled it from crown to ends in slow, deliberate strokes. Each pass moved sebum, the scalp's own protective oil, from root to tip. By the time she reached the basin, her hair was already half clean. Less soap meant less stripping meant less breakage. The quiet, rhythmic sound of bristles in a still room. She was not just brushing, she was preparing, the way a carpenter sands before he paints. Nobody teaches this anymore. We just pour and scrub and wonder why it breaks. And the water temperature she used was not an afterthought. There was a rule. Breaking it had consequences. Number 13, women washed with lukewarm water and finished with the coldest water they could stand. Hot water weakened the cuticle, cold water sealed it shut. Water heated on the stove and tested against the inside of the wrist, warm enough to dissolve soap, not a degree hotter. Then the final rinse, cold water straight from the tap, the gasp when it hit the scalp, the way the hair felt different immediately, smoother, tighter, like the strands had closed ranks. The cuticle laid flat by the cold, reflected light the way a polished floor reflects a window. Hot showers feel good, cold rinses work. She chose what worked. That discipline is the difference between hair that thins at 40 and hair that holds at 70. 5 items in and a pattern is already visible. Not one of these women was trying to be natural. She was not watching a tutorial. She was using what she had, the way she was taught, because it worked. The word natural was not a marketing category in 1954. It was just the way things were done. The marketing came later, when someone figured out how to charge money for a problem that did not yet exist. Number 12, women did not just scrub their scalp during a wash. They massaged it. Circular motions with the fingertips, firm, steady pressure. Several minutes of focused attention on the scalp itself. 10 fingertips pressed in, small circles from hairline to crown to nape. Mothers taught daughters the same thing every time. Never scratch, always press. 2 full minutes before rinsing, the slight redness afterward, blood rising to the surface. The warm tingle that lasted an hour. Today there are electronic scalp massagers selling for $40. They vibrate, they pulse. They do less than her fingers did for free. She was not just washing her hair, she was feeding it from the inside with her own hands, and when the washing was done, what she did not do next matters as much as what she did. Number 11, women blotted their hair dry with a towel. They did not rub. Rubbing wet hair roughs up the cuticle and causes breakage. Every mother knew this. A cotton towel, flour sack cotton, soft from 100 washings. Pressed gently around sections of hair, squeezed, not twisted. She patted the crown, pressed the ends, squeezed the length once, then wrapped the towel loosely while she dressed. No rough friction, no turban yanked tight. The hair was still damp when she sat down to set it. That was intentional. Damp hair holds a set, bone-dry hair does not. She treated wet hair the way she treated anything fragile, with care. That understanding disappeared the day the blow-dryer arrived. But the rinse that came between the wash and the towel, that was where the real secret lived, and it did not come from a bottle. Number 10. After every wash, women poured diluted apple cider vinegar through their hair as a final rinse. It removed soap residue, sealed the cuticle, restored the scalp's natural pH, and left hair shinier than anything on the market today. Heinz apple cider vinegar, 23 cents a bottle, 1 tablespoon in a cup of warm water, stirred in a mason jar, poured slowly over the hair while her free hand caught the runoff in a basin to pour through again. The sharp smell lasted 10 minutes and vanished. What remained was hair that reflected light like glass. No waxy buildup, no silicone film. The cuticle lay flat because vinegar is mildly acidic, the exact pH of healthy hair. That is chemistry practiced at the kitchen sink. A bottle lasted 6 months. It cost less than a loaf of bread. Nobody could patent vinegar. That was the problem. Vinegar handled the outside of the strand. But there was another rinse, made from something on the kitchen windowsill that handled what was happening underneath at the root. Number 9. Women simmered rosemary in water, strained it, and poured it over the scalp as a final rinse. It was the standard remedy for thinning hair in households across America. A sprig from the garden or a jar from the spice rack, simmered 20 minutes, strained through cheesecloth, dark amber liquid with a fragrance between pine and camphor, poured over the scalp, massaged in, never rinsed out. A well-known 2015 clinical study found that rosemary oil performed similarly to a 2% concentration of minoxidil for hair regrowth after 6 months. Last year, rosemary water went viral on social media. Millions of young women filmed themselves pouring herb water on their hair as though they had just invented something. Their grandmothers were doing it in 1952. The rosemary grew in a clay pot on the windowsill. It cost nothing but sunlight. The industry now sells it for $28 an ounce. Number 8. Women separated egg yolks from the whites and used the yolks alone as shampoo. The yolk contains lecithin, a natural emulsifier that helps bind oil and dirt so they can be rinsed away. While the yolk is packed with nutrients, the proteins in an egg are actually too large to deeply bond with your hair's internal structure without chemical hydrolysis, but they can temporarily coat the strand, making it feel temporarily thicker. Here's the thing nobody says out loud. These women were not trying to grow their hair. They were not fighting thinning. Their hair was already thick. It had never been stripped by daily detergent washing, never scorched by flat irons at 200 degrees, never coated in silicone that sealed damage underneath a layer of artificial shine. These rituals did not repair damage, they prevented it from ever happening. That distinction is everything. Americans now spend over $48 billion a year on hair care. Most of it goes toward fixing problems that did not exist when the kitchen sink was the salon. Number 7. Women brewed dried stinging nettle leaves into a strong tea and poured it over the scalp after washing. Nettle was the standard folk remedy for thinning hair. Dried nettle from the pharmacy or gathered wearing gloves from a ditch bank in spring, steeped 15 minutes, strained, a dark green liquid with a grassy mineral smell, poured warm over the scalp, left in. The silica and iron strengthened the shaft. The improved circulation fed the follicle. Women who used it reported the same thing: less hair in the brush, more hair on the head. A box of dried nettle at the 5 and dime cost 15 cents. She did not have a dermatologist. She had a remedy her mother gave her. It worked. The hairbrush told her every morning nettle handled thinning, but there was another treatment for the opposite problem: hair gone dry and brittle from winter air or hard work. Number 6. The night before a wash, women heated castor oil on the stove, worked it into the scalp, and slept with a towel over the pillow. By morning, the oil had penetrated the shaft. The next day's wash removed the excess. Castor oil in the brown glass bottle, 20 cents, a tablespoon warmed in a saucepan until just above body temperature. Parted the hair in sections, applied with the fingertips directly to the scalp, massaged in circles. The heavy, viscous feel of castor oil between the fingers. An old towel over the pillowcase. By morning, the oil had bonded to the keratin. The wash removed the surface. The moisture stayed. That same oil now appears in $60 hair growth serums, diluted to a fraction of its strength. The ingredient did not change. The price did. Number 5. Once a month, women dissolved a tablespoon of Arm & Hammer baking soda in warm water and used it to strip all buildup from the hair. A reset wash. The orange box from the kitchen, a heaping tablespoon in a cup of warm water, poured through the hair, no lather, no foam, a slightly gritty feeling. The hair felt almost too clean afterward, stripped to its original state. She followed it immediately with the vinegar rinse to seal the cuticle, baking soda to strip, vinegar to seal. The most effective deep cleaning system any of them ever used. Under a penny per wash, one box of Arm & Hammer cleaned her hair, her oven, her teeth, and her sink. No woman in 1954 would have believed you would one day need a separate product for each. Number 4. Women did not blow dry their hair. Handheld dryers existed in salons, but homes did not have one until the late 60s. Hair dried in the open air, and it was stronger because of it. Hair wrapped in a cotton towel for 10 minutes, then released, set on rollers while damp, or left to dry on the back porch with the Saturday Evening Post in her lap. No blast of 400-degree air, no cuticle scorched open, no split ends from thermal damage compounding week after week. The hair dried slowly, the cuticle closed on its own. Each strand kept its full moisture. Hair that had never been heat damaged bent without breaking. It had weight. The blow dryer arrived like a convenience. It stayed like an addiction. And it took something most women never noticed was gone: the natural thickness of hair that had never been cooked. Nearly every ritual on this list shares one principle. It is slow. The oil sat overnight. The rinse was poured twice. The hair dried in the air. There was no express lane. The modern hair care industry runs on speed. Wash faster, dry faster, style faster. But hair does not operate on a schedule. It grows slowly. It heals slowly. The women who understood that had the thickest hair in the room at every age. Number 3. Women dissolved unflavored Knox gelatin in warm water and poured it through freshly washed hair. Left it in, did not rinse. It coated each strand in a layer of animal collagen protein, giving the hair temporary structure. Knox gelatin in the red box, 10 cents a packet. 1 teaspoon dissolved in a cup of boiled water, poured through clean hair at the sink. The hair felt thicker while still wet. By the time it dried, each strand carried a transparent protein shell. Less breakage, more body, a shine like glass. While modern salon treatments use chemically altered keratin to deeply rebuild hair bonds, this humble gelatin rinse offered a similar surface-level smoothing effect for pennies. She bought Knox at the A&P. Half the box made Jell-O for Sunday dinner. The other half went on her hair. Total cost, a dime. The gelatin coated the strand. But the women who had the thickest hair were doing something even more fundamental. It had nothing to do with any treatment. It had to do with how thoroughly they rinsed. Number 2, women did not rinse under a running shower. They caught the water in an enamel basin and poured it back through, a second time, sometimes a third, until every trace of soap was gone. A white enamel basin in the sink catching the runoff. The water poured back with a pitcher, slowly. The water ran clearer each pass. By the third pour, it was transparent. No residue, no film, no soap scum coating each strand. The hair floated in that final water, light and weightless. Modern women rinse 30 seconds under a shower and call it done. Soap residue builds invisibly, wash after wash. It dulls the hair. It suffocates the follicle. The basin method left nothing behind. She did not have hot water on demand, so she made every drop count. The limitation forced a thoroughness that abundance has completely destroyed. And now the one ritual that held all the others together. The practice that explains, more than anything else, why their hair stayed thick for decades, and ours does not. Number 1, women wash their hair once a week, some every 10 days, some every 2 weeks. That was considered normal. That was what the doctors recommended. And it is the single most important reason their hair was thicker than ours. Saturday morning, the one wash of the week, a bar of ivory at a nickel or a bottle of Prel at 35 cents. 1 lather worked through with the fingertips, 1 rinse, then the cold final pour. If the hair squeaked between the fingers, it was clean. No second lather, no repeat. The scalp, left alone for 7 days, regulated its own oil. Sebum, the body's own conditioner, had time to travel the full length of the strand. Hair washed once a week did not get greasier. It got smarter. It balanced itself. That oil protected each strand from breakage, from sun, from wind. Hair trained this way was thicker, stronger, and shinier than anything daily washing has ever produced. Then the shampoo companies figured something out. Their synthetic detergents stripped hair so aggressively that the scalp overproduced oil in a cycle that demanded more washing, more product, more spending. Rinse and repeat was never a hygiene instruction. It was a business model printed on the back of every bottle. The woman washing once a week was not behind the times. She was immune to the whole machine. and her hair proved it every day until she was 80 years old. And somewhere tonight, an old woman is leaning over a kitchen sink while her granddaughter pours warm water from a pitcher. The bar of soap sits on the saucer. The vinegar waits on the counter, and the lesson passes one last time from hand to hand.
Every practice in this video shared 3 qualities. It cost almost nothing. It used what was already in the house. And it was replaced by a product that cost 50 times more and worked no better. That is not coincidence. That is the blueprint of an industry that could not sell what your grandmother already knew how to do for free. The ice water, the remedies, the food, the tricks, the rituals. None of them required a logo or a subscription or a monthly shipment. They required a kitchen, a bathroom, and a mother who remembered. The knowledge was never lost. It was made invisible. A bowl of ice water was replaced by a $40 serum. A kitchen remedy was split into 12 products and repackaged as a subscription. These methods never stopped working. We just stopped being shown them. The addict remembers.